Yeah, well, first of all, what has happened this year has had a massive effect on many levels on everybody. And without question, it has opened up the minds and opened the eyes of increasingly large numbers of people. Because when life is just, ticking along, you tend to almost go along in like neutral or in a gear that just does almost unconsciously goes through your life. But when you're faced with something like humanity's been faced with, and I'm not talking about the virus, I'm talking about the government impositions as a result of the virus, there comes a point where you see the world, you start to see the world in a different way. And that's the first breaking of the waters where, I see people and I perceive them to be living in bubbles. I mean, everyone has been in a bubble. It's a bubble of perception. It's a bubble of sense of reality about self and the world and reality in general. And it just kind of, bounces along through life. And then you get a big shock. And so many people have had massive spiritual awakenings at a point where you might describe it as their worst nightmare. Yes. And I have this phrase, life so often gives you your greatest gifts, brilliantly disguised as your worst nightmare. Certainly happened to me. So people are, because of the extreme nature of what's going on, they're being faced with something that perhaps they didn't want to look at before, or have never thought was necessary, or never thought there was anything to look at. Suddenly they realize the world is not like they thought it was, and it's not run by the forces they thought it was. And we are kept in the dark about all the fundamentals that we need to know to get a grasp of actually what's happening in the world and who and what is behind it. And so you have two worlds. You have the world of the population, and we're given a certain amount of knowledge, unless we go looking for it, through control of the education system, the media, etc. And we're held in a tiny little box of information, thus perception. Then you've got this other world, which is the world of secret societies and satanic groups and all that comes from that. And they operate in a very, very, very different level of knowledge, especially on the inner core of it. Mm-hmm. And yes, a lot of that knowledge is about the designs they have for the world, but the key knowledge that they want to keep from us was well summarized in your introduction. They want to sell us the idea that we are our labels, as I call them. They want to sell us what I call phantom self. People, if you say to people, who are you, nice to meet you, they'll give you their name, they'll give you their life story maybe, they'll give you their job, and so on. They'll give you their labels. But the labels that we are given and give ourselves are just brief experiences for the true I, which is consciousness. The consciousness having the experience, and that's the consciousness that moves on when this experience, very brief experience, is over, that we call human. And so 30 years ago, I've always been kind of open. I've rejected religion, and I've rejected the scientific version that we're all a cosmic accident and life's a bitch and then you die. So I've rejected them all my life. But I never really started looking at, okay, so how do I see it then? Until the late 1980s, when some very strange things happened to me, and I started to remember, because that's what we're doing. That's what awakening is. It's remembering what we have been manipulated to forget. I started to remember that life is not like we're told it is. Life is phenomenally different. And to keep us under control, the control of the few of the many, we have to be kept from that knowledge of the true self. Because once you emerge to that, you're not going to be controlled. You're not going to submit to face masks and all this other imposition. You're just not going to do it. So they have to keep us in label consciousness, as I call it. I am my labels. And what does that say? I am limited. I have no power. And I must hand my life to other people in authority to tell me what to do. So all that that memory started to emerge in the latter part of the 1980s, and particularly in 1989, when some real strange things happened to me. First of all, from very early 1989, whenever I was in a room alone, I felt like I wasn't alone. There was another presence there. And this went on all the way through 1989 into early 1990. And as those months passed, this presence became more and more tangible and obvious to me. So when we went in towards the spring of 1990, I was in a hotel room. I was working for the BBC. I used to be a television presenter. I'm in this empty hotel room just across from the BBC in London. And this presence was so tangible that I was sitting on the edge of the bed, and I just said out into the room, look, if there's something there, would you please contact me, because you're driving me up the wall. And a few days later, I was just 10 minutes walk from here with my son. We were going into a news shop. Actually, we're going into a cafe, but we're outside a news shop at the time. And someone came over to me to talk to me. My son, Gareth, little boy then, big strapping lad now, he went into the news shop. So when this conversation was finished, I went in to say, come on, Gaz, we'll go and get something to eat. And as I looked at him, he's looking at the books. It was like, well, what I would say now, I didn't realize it at the time, was an electromagnetic field suddenly descended around me. And what I heard, this is March 1990, what I heard was, go and look at the books on the far side. It wasn't a voice, it was a very strong thought form that went through my mind. Go and look at the books on the far side. And what was happening is that I was feeling this strange atmosphere around me. It's electromagnetic field, I see that now. Mm-hmm. And I felt like my feet were being pulled to the ground like magnets, again, electromagnetism. And so I'm in a daze, and I walk across to the books, and there's only a few books in this news shop, and they were all romantic novels. I knew that shop very well. So I walked across thinking, what do I want to look at these books for? But in among them was a book that stood out because it was so different. It's called Mind to Mind, by what I realized when I turned and read the blurb, was a professional psychic called Betty Shine. So as soon as I saw the word psychic on the blurb, I thought, I wonder if she'd be able to pick up what I've been feeling around me in the last year. So I contacted her. I didn't tell her why. She did hands-on healing at the time, and I said, look, I've got arthritis. Maybe hands-on healing will help. But I just went along to see if she'd pick up anything. So I went a couple of times, hands-on healing, very nice, very interesting conversations. And I went the third time, and I'm lying on this medical type bench in her room, her front room. And as she's working on, near my left knee, I felt like a spider's web on my face. And what struck me is I'd read in her book that when other dimensions are trying to lock into you, you can feel like a spider's web on your face. Well, what is that again? It's electromagnetic energy. The same kind of energy that makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up when you're in an excited crowd, etc. Anyway, I didn't say anything to Betty Shine because I'm still thinking, I read this in her book. I'm all new to this, you see. And then suddenly she launches her head back, and she said, "My God, this is powerful. I've got to close my eyes for this one." And then over the next few minutes, she said, I'm being told to tell you this. You're going out on a world stage and you're going to reveal great secrets. That basically there is, that humanity has to know things that people need to know to understand what's happening in the world. There's a big awakening coming, a big awakening of humanity coming. And that what was one line? One man cannot change the world, but one man can communicate the message that can change the world.